Hello and welcome to the Marquez Mentality. My name is Nick Bonanno. I am a producer and the senior official for the United Wrestling Network. And my guests this evening are the president of the United Wrestling Network, David Marquez. Hi, David.
Hello. Hi.
And also joining us this evening is Shane Hurricane Helms. How you doing?
Hey, thanks for having me on, guys.
Of course.
Yeah,
of course.
man. Thanks for joining us.
So
So let's just get into it. You got a question? Go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead. Okay.
All right.
Like a well-oiled machine. See, this
This
is why I do my podcast by myself.
You know
Oh,
what?
my.
We've done 500 episodes of Championship Wrestling from Hollywood in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But the internet's not our thing. Go ahead, Nick.
I was going to ask, so why wrestling? Of all the things you could have done.
Oh man, wrestling was my first love. It's my earliest memory of television. I was watching it with my dad in the late 70s. I went to my first live event in 1979 in Charlotte, North Carolina. So it was just, you hear everybody say it's their childhood dream, and but for me, it's legit. That's not just a cliche bumper sticker gimmick. It's what I always wanted to do by far.
It's interesting because I kind of went the different route. I grew up around wrestling at the exact same time. My family was involved with the Olympic Auditorium here in Los Angeles, so I was down there a lot. And I didn't take to wrestling as because I was kind of drugged to it. Like, hey, you have to come to this thing. I wanted to. You're into comic books, but I wanted to be an animator. I wanted to draw Disney cartoons. So wrestling wasn't my first thing, but watching it on television, Freddie Blassie, all that stuff on my end, I caught on to it more as the storytelling side of it, and it being a television show kind of early because I was there. But who are your inspirations? So you're from a real heavy area with pro wrestling, a lot of culture. When you watch television, was it like Johnny Weaver, or like who was the one that got you?
Well, first I want to say too, like I was watching with my dad. My dad was a huge fan, so that's kind of how it rubbed off on me. That's why I was on television so much. But yeah, I mean, back in those days, and I'm a Mid-Atlantic guy, NWA Mid-Atlantic. So, I mean, every single person I liked. And early on, I mean, I think a lot of fans go through stages where they have their favorites. But I just really, even at an early age, started to like the totality of it all. I mean, even, what you would call enhancement guys or jobbers or whatever, I would like start studying those guys even at a young age and start picking up hey, some of these enhancement guys are a lot better than some of the other enhancement guys. As a matter of fact, some of the enhancement guys are better than the guys getting the push in certain circumstances. So, but my favorites of all time are Ric Flair and Randy Savage. I didn't get to see WWF until my first year in high school, till 1988. We just didn't have it down here. And so I was all a NWA guy. And to be honest, I was kind of disappointed in WWF when I finally got to see it. It's just, I mean, because comparing to the in-ring style of the Mid-Atlantic area, the Horsemen and all that shit, that's a high bar to measure up to. But, once Savage started rolling, Savage, Steamboat, and Bret Hart, and you really saw the in-ring work in WWF, make a significant advance.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite time in wrestling? Like you either as an early fan or being a performer, being in the business, like anything really stick out to you, or is there in sections? Because I think I could answer it in sections just after being in it and then before I got into it. But anything like really hit you? What's your favorite things?
I mean, as a fan, the 80s NWA was my favorite stuff. If I could go back to that, and I miss just being that wrapped up in it fan, like where I had to see it every single minute of it. I had to watch, and they would do good cliffhangers back then too. It generally piss you off. There was always something happening at the end of that show, and Davy Crockett like, "We'll be back next week," and you're like, you're down banging your fists on the table. I remember the biggest one of all time was they were showing I believe this was on the Saturday show, the 605 TBS Superstation. It might have been that one. But anyway, the last thing of the show was Ronnie Garvin beating Ric Flair with a top rope sunset flip for the NWA title. And like, I just never thought Ronnie Garvin was going to be the world champion. And then it just goes off. Well, we'll see you next week. And me and my dad are just looking at each other like, what the fuck just happened? You know,
Yeah.
Oh, excuse me. I don't know if I cuss on my podcast all the time.
Okay.
So
I do too.
Okay. So we didn't know what the fuck. Like, Ronnie Garvin just beat Ric Flair. What the fuck? And you have to wait 7 days to find out if that shit really happened, because there's no internet back then. Or if they had it, you know, the aliens had it, they weren't sharing it with us yet. But yeah, I definitely missed that. But as far as being a performer, you know, my I don't know, man, that Hurricane character, I loved all of that, you know, especially the early part. But my heel run as Gregory Helms, I think, was my best body of work as far as the matches I was putting out. And SmackDown at that time had the strongest roster on the planet. So I don't know. It's hard to pick what my favorite time is, but
No, I got you. It's interesting you bring that up. So like growing up in LA, I didn't have cable. We didn't have cable till way later. So we had Lucha Libre everywhere. We had Olympic Auditorium Wrestling, which was kind of NWA, but not. And then the WWF was on here, but it was, you know, that 83, 84 kind of cool, not cool. Like you didn't know if you were going to get a surprise Bruno Sammartino match, or you were going to just, you know, watch the Wild Samoans do something crazy. It was like there was no rhyme or reason in some ways with the WWF stuff. But then my cousin, they got a big C dish satellite, and that's when I saw TBS for the first time, probably in late '85 or early '86, and so all of a sudden the music hits, this and that, and the, you know, Shivani and Crockett are on the air, and I'm watching this little TV studio versus, because I never saw a TV studio wrestling. I was used to the WWF setup, and I was watching this, and it's like, this is way more cool. And these guys, these dudes are men, and they're beating the shit out of each other, and they're spitting on each other. They're taking their boots off. Like in LA, people don't take their shoes off. They just like grab guns. Like I didn't grow up with people who sounded like that. So it was just like this awesome fantasy land to me to watch this.
Did you get World Class at all?
On KDOC TV, actually, the station we run on in LA, they had way late at night. We had Wally George, who was a crazy conservative talk show host, followed by World Class, but it was only a half-hour version, and it was all Von Erichs. Like it was just a half hour of Von Erichs.
Even the 2-hour version was all Von Erichs.
Yeah, so we didn't get that. But then, you know, I saw it on ESPN and the AWA stuff on ESPN. But yeah, man, just that time. And I try to tell younger people, did you ever think that you'd be the old guy?
I never thought about it. I assumed it would happen. I think there were some times when I thought it wasn't going to happen, but
But think about it. Like you coming up, we came up at pretty much the exact same time in wrestling. I was always the kid. I was always around people. I started with Harley Race and Gordon Soley in Springfield, Missouri, and I was the kid. I was always the guy on the outside. It didn't matter how much influence I had, or if I was signing the checks, they'd still fade the shit out of me, and I wasn't allowed. But then coming up and through, now that I've been on TV as an interviewer or a commentator or whatever, that's really pushing like 25 years. And I'm hearing people say, "Hey, Dave, I grew up with you." Like, how does that feel?
I've had people say that to me and they look older than me. And I'm like, are you sure?
Right.
How old am I? This might be just my mind playing tricks on me, though.
Yeah,
I tell you, dude, I do want to retract a little bit. There was a moment in time which I consider the best period of wrestling. It was only, I think it was less than a year, but there was a short period when Savage was the WWF champion, Flair was the NWA champion, and Kurt Hennig was the AWA champion. And so, like, my favorites had all three belts. The big three were held by people that I loved, and so that was like that was everything was right in the world in that little particular window of time. And then Savage lost it to Hogan, I forget. Maybe Bockwinkel beat or Jerry Lawler.
I
No,
think
Jerry Lawler beat
Jerry
Henning.
Lawler beat Henning. Yeah.
Yeah.
Was it like? And I don't want to try to romanticize the period, but wasn't it better to wait for the magazines? Like, wasn't that like a trip? Like you go to the store, you wait for it, and it comes up, and you hear about all this stuff from around the world, bloody Puerto Rico, these crowds in Japan, like just your imagination, like from a comic book perspective too, when you're reading this stuff, you have to imagine this.
Yeah. I mean, I got so much information from the magazines, and my dad would buy them, and I would read those things over and over, and know every name. And there'd be guys like I didn't know if they were any good, but I know they look good in the magazines. I know they had it, I just, you kind of, like you said, romanticize, or you just assume. Like, I remember a guy from Calgary named Larry Cameron, and just, he looked like he would be the greatest wrestler of all time. And I never have seen one match of him, and I don't want to, because I don't want to be disappointed. But I have built up in my mind that this is going to be the next guy. But yeah, I understand. Yeah, I do miss the magazines. That's the they were a victim of the internet age, though. So
sure,
and they're not coming back. But but like I said, I do miss that. When you wanting the information, you can't get it. Like now, we got an information overload, and it's a weird thing. I mean, it's a weird thing to complain about, having too much information.
Yeah, but sometimes it's sometimes it's the wrong information at the wrong time, or the right information at the wrong time.
It has taken away the must-see aspect of the business, because you can see it the second you get home. I mean, you don't have to be home anymore at 9:00 for Monday Night Raw, because you can just watch it whenever, and everybody's got a little TV with them at all times. So the must-see aspect of it is dead and gone. It might not ever come back.
Yeah, I'd go to the newsstand or the grocery store, and like if I had $5, and you'd like, oh, is it going to be PWI, or is it going to be Tiger Eye, or is it going to be Mad Magazine? Like, what am I going to be able to take home right now? And I think PWI would always win. But my thing in the rankings, it's like you'd see guys job on like WWF, so like Rusty Brooks, but then you'll see like a global listing, and Rusty Brooks is like number 4.
Yeah,
like, how the fuck did that dude get number 4? And he couldn't even beat like Tiger Chung Lee on Primetime Wrestling.
Like that whole group must suck. Yeah, that's the.
I know, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, but the magic, and that's kind of like. So when I got into it more as a profession from the television side, it was because I didn't go into animation, and I realized it was kind of like puppeteering with humans, and you were still telling stories, and there are still characters involved. And then I saw the real behind the scenes of the craziness that goes on, especially back then. And, I kind of missed that. And I try explaining to the guys today, like, even if it's only 20, 25 years, that what the camaraderie is missing, because guys don't go anywhere. And not to glorify the partying and all that kind of stuff, but it's like, even these guys after a match, they just they might have a beer, maybe, but they're going to go home and I guess live their lives. And so that
how dare they?
What's that?
How dare they? How dare
I
they
know.
go home and live their lives?
Why would they want to do that when they can stay out till 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, watch Harley race, hip toss Abdul the Butcher on the hoods of cars? Like that doesn't happen anymore. Yeah,
well, you don't really have the long loops, in the indie scene. You might have a solid weekend. A solid weekend is just Friday, Saturday, Sunday. On the independent scene, you don't have those 2-3 week loops where you don't make it home and all. That's when you would, that was the trenches. Like nobody is in the trenches anymore. The business in that aspect is a lot easier. Travel in all industries is a lot easier. Before the whole COVID gimmick. So you get the bond through hardship. When you guys go, I remember we did in SmackDown, we did like 15 days in Europe, or 15 to 18 days. And it was just like travel. It was like a bus or a plane every day in a new city every night. And we were beat to shit. But like, that's when you come together. That's when you come together. You don't really come together when everything's just hokey dory and A-OK. It's hardships is what brings, what builds that camaraderie.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, Adam Pierce and I are great friends, and we've traveled
I'm
all
sorry to hear
over
that.
each other. And yeah, trust me, I have the lumps to prove it. Um, and you know, everywhere we went, it was that old way, even with us, 15 years ago. And you know, whether we were in Europe or going to Mexico or Canada or wherever in the States, there was always, like you're talking about, that bond. It's
Yeah.
Do you feel
You never remember
that
when everything goes perfectly. You never remember that shit
never at
ever.
all?
You
Never.
know, when something's a disaster, that's what you remember, and you remember getting through it, and you laugh about it. You never once go, hey, you remember that tour we did where everything went great? Like that shit. Nobody talks about that. Nobody
No one
cares.
talks about that. No, and that's
It's
not the fun
always
stuff.
it's always like you remember. I remember too. We did a house. This was the Raw brand. This was a good story. I don't. I might not even ever told this one. I don't know. But we did Monterrey, Mexico on a Saturday, and the Friday show was Hidalgo, Texas, and the Sunday show was Laredo. So it's like Hidalgo and Laredo were the bookends, and we had a big show in Monterrey in Mexico. So we took a bus to Monterrey, and I guess in Monterrey while we're doing the show, they changed the buses. They got different buses for whatever reason, you know. That's a production thing. So now we're going back across the border where the paperwork doesn't match up for the buses. And so, or the names or some shit. But anyway, the whole Raw roster, they kicked us off the fucking bus at the border. It's like 3 a.m. You know, we're these big stars, right? Nuh-uh. Not to those guys, they didn't give a fuck about any of us. And so, and then we all like 3 a.m. and they just kicked us all off the damn. They let the buses go. And so, like we had to call, somebody got in touch with the hotel, and the hotel luckily was only 15 miles away, 20 miles away, and they sent shuttles to come get us. But you're talking about Shawn, Hunter, Flair, Batista, the whole Raw roster, all of these big stars, and we're just stuck on the side of the road at 3 a.m. and these cars are driving by. When them cars drive across that border, they ain't stopping for nobody. They don't give a shit who we are anyway.
Nope.
Like that's the shit you remember. I don't remember any of those tours where everything went great.
Yeah, no, and that's the fun with it. Like, do you find, like, I'm told this a lot, and I've not had the notoriety on air as you or the other people I'm going to mention, but like even with me when I'm working with talent, producing a show, yeah, I'm the boss of the show. I pay the guys, but it's like I hear, Dave, you're intimidating, which really bothers me when I hear that. But is it more like we had Percy Pringle, Paul Bearer on our show for 3 years prior to his death? He was on the program for 3 solid years, and no one cuddled up to him. And you know, Percy's a great guy, and you could fuck around with him, and he's one of the boys, and he's happy to lend information and rib like crazy. But I felt that since this generation that he was working with played with him as a toy or a stuffed animal, or he was on bedspread sheets, you know, like they didn't want to approach him. Like now that now you're dealing with talent that grew up watching you as a performer in your height, you know, your prime. How do you deal with that? Do you feel that it comes across that way, that they're a little taken back because they're talking to the hurricane?
Sometimes, and you know, I mean, hell, there's some people that I've done indie shows with that, you know, I mean, I left WWE in 2010, so they didn't even see me there. You know what I mean? I've been on Twitter longer than they've been wrestling. You know, some of these guys, and so some of them don't even know me, and some of them too, it is an intimidation. They don't know what to say, so some don't say anything. Like, you would think that you walk into a locker room, you know, and the handshake thing, I really don't give a shit about. You know, if you don't want to do that, I really don't care. You know, for me, it's a respect thing. That's what I did. So I'll still walk in and go say hey to everybody. You know, but I might be late that day. If I'm late and I'm sitting here rushing, you know, don't get mad at me because I didn't say hey or whatever. But I think, you know, just people are different. You know, even though we have in wrestling, we have all these outgoing personalities on screen. That doesn't mean that's who that person is as a human being. You know, a lot of people in this business are kind of introverted, you know, behind the scenes, and they just kind of want to do their shit, and they don't know how to communicate, you know. So, I mean, I try not to judge people, but it definitely isn't like I walk into a locker room and everybody's like, "Oh my God, it's the Hurricane! I can't wait to see that guy." Sometimes people really don't say a lot to me at all. You know, just a guy I'm working, I deal with it, and I mean, everybody's respectful. Nobody's like disrespectful to me. You know, I'm kind of lucky in that regard. But there is a lot of time when I'm kind of sitting over there in the corner by myself and like, all right, I just do my shit and leave then.
Well, when you were coming up, whether it's WCW or Wild Side or wherever you were at, WWE, working with agents, producers, like who really took to you? Who gave you the advice that you felt propelled you to actually continue doing this? Because I'm sure there were times when you were like, "Well, fuck this. This is why am I doing this?" Because I know we've all been there.
Yeah, well, the agents, in WCW weren't as hands-on, so there was only a very few that we had to deal with. Kevin Sullivan always gave me great advice there. Terry Taylor gave me great advice. No issues in WCW whatsoever. Keep in mind, I was only in WCW like a year and a half. For all the 3-count memories that people still have, we were 3-count for 9 months. So that's really a testament to how good, kind of how well that gimmick worked. Because
it was great though.
Yeah, and that was fun. And that was in 2000, so that's been 20 years ago. For 9 months, and I get 3-count shit every day. But and then you get to WWF, WWE at the time. The agents that I worked with the most, actually, that helped with the Hurricane character was Pat Patterson. Because Pat was a character. Pat was a gimmick. And so I was a wrestler. I didn't envision myself ever having a cape and a mask. I got 22 amateur gold medals. I was, if you saw how I wrestled as Gregory Helms, and even as Sugar Shane, when I started to get the run by myself, I was a little technical guy. I liked inventing new moves. And actually, that was one of the things I was known for. Well, now I got to be this character, and I'm not quite sure how to do it. I know what it's going to take to make it work, but there's a lot of experimenting that I had to do, and Pat was just one of those guys that would always, everything he said just ended up being true, so I really took to him. Sergeant Slaughter did really well. I think he's very under-credited in terms of, you got a guy in Sergeant Slaughter that, man, he got over as a babyface. He got over as a heel, and he could talk and he could sell merch. And he kind of checked a lot of the boxes on what it takes to be, one of the greats, but he might not have been one of those technical guys, but man, you don't always have to be. Hogan wasn't a technical guy. A lot of guys aren't technical guys. Piper wasn't a technical guy, but Sarge would always, it would be small things too. It just every now and then he hit you with a gem. He'd be like, okay. But there were some agents too that I didn't get along with, just difference of philosophies and them not understanding what I was going through. If I have an agent that's just a wrestler and that was never a character or never a gimmick whatsoever, they're giving me advice that they're not really sure about, because they didn't have to do it. Wrestling is one of those things, and that experience is the best teacher. Until you try to do what we do, it's really hard. You can give opinions, but to give constructive criticism, I'm one of those guys. I don't take constructive criticism from somebody that hasn't constructed anything. Then it's just an opinion. Then you can't critique me unless you've done it.
Right. So now going into the producer role at the WWE. So you're a performer for many years, but now you have to give orders and get that person, that character, gimmick over. It's your job to make sure the vision is there. And in today's world, a lot of the younger guys coming up, they feel like they have an opinion. You and I, we weren't allowed to have opinions.
Yeah.
You do this, shut up. This is what you're doing. This is the show.
Yeah.
You like it, do it. If not, go away. But here's a good people, mind you. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them, but they're making great money. They're sort of doing less, which is awesome. But you come to them and you say, well, you're going to be a pink dinosaur that spits green bubble gum. Go. And they're looking at you like, what? Even today, that's odd. But how do your experiences throughout the years, did that help you be a producer? And especially dealing with, the big boss who is just telling you this is what it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was things that I didn't like from producers, and I tried to use that in my experience. Okay, if I didn't like this from a producer, I don't want to be that person. So I try to always be kind to the person, even if, hey, you might have a shit assignment tonight. And, it is really an ego driven business. And to your point about, the people that complain, is way out of hand today. You know, a lot of complainers, you know, and I first started my producing duties in TNA was where I first got my feet wet and really enjoyed it. I had a really good time, you know, but like, especially in this WWE run, you know, that was just kind of the culture that I think a lot of the guys were just used to complaining. Even when they were given something good, they're so used to complaining that their gut instinct is to complain about it. And then they'll think about it and go, wait a minute, it's actually a good idea, you know? And it won't even be nothing I suggested. It's just, all right, this is what creative has for you tonight. I'm just sometimes you're just a messenger. Hey, here's what they want, you know? And now my job will be together. Let's figure out how to, you know, the best way to implement that. But yeah, I mean, back in my day, being one of those guys, like when Jack Lanza gave you a finish, that was the end of the conversation. That was it. You know, you didn't, hey, well, what about this? You gotta go fuck yourself. Go home. You know,
That's right.
That was exactly how it was, and it was easier back then. You know, I mean, like, okay, you know, but you trusted the system. I think there's a kind of an inherent distrust that's kind of going on now because maybe there's a multitude of reasons. I don't know, and maybe these talents have reasons to feel that way. You know, keep in mind, I was there less than a year before the furlough as a producer, or around that time. So I don't know what all they've been through. Maybe they've had a bunch of conversations with creative or whoever, and they're soured on the process, you know? So, you know, I tried to be open-minded to everybody about it, because it is tough, man. Like when it's in your heart, it'll fuck with your head. That's for sure. In anything in life. If it's in your heart, it will drive you crazy if it's not going right. Yeah,
no, I hear you, man, because I even get it on our end and our scale, because I feel we're like a finishing school. So on our program and our broadcast, they really learn how to work television, how to be on camera. You know, it's good footage, good audio, everything. So they got to learn how to be quiet. They have to learn how to work in a studio environment, all that kind of stuff. And even on my end, when we're trying to give them something, it's funny you say over the top rope sunset flip as a finish. I give that to people all the time, and they look at me like, what? I was like, no, trust me. Let's go with it. And everyone always fights me on stuff like that. And that's why I wanted to ask, being like the older guy in wrestling. Like I remember when I was freelancing for WWF and WCW in production, you know, I'd sit back to the side and watch like Jay Strongbow try explaining something, like say something. And it, like you said, it was it, you know, or you'd go up to Arnold Scullin to try to get paid. And then someone would come up and talk to you before you got paid, and this is this and this and that. And I'd watch that over and over and over again. And with Gordon Soley, Harley Race, and my experiences, like bringing that into today, it's not unfortunate, or fortunately, it's the PC side of it actually does help, because you can't talk and do and all that. And I'm a Terry Taylor guy too. You know, if you bring him that 6-pack of Diet Mountain Dew and a bag of ice, you know, you're his best friend. But like I learned so much from all these people, and I try to spread that around. But sometimes I feel like it's just not warranted. Like they don't care. They don't want to accept it. We're just another show. There's another show down the street, even though we're on 133 stations across the country. Yeah. You know, I know there's the internet. I know they're their own brand. I get all that. But just packaging, you know, coming from local wrestling like you did and being on local television, whether with like it's with a Bill Behrens or Burt Prentice or somebody like that, like, can you kind of help, if there's younger workers watching this right now, the importance of being on a local broadcast or a more regional broadcast before they get to the big stage?
Yeah, you know, I mean, I just always looked at everything like a test. I looked at everything that was presented to me as a test. How do I pass this test? How do I pass this test today? And some tests are easy, you know, and hey, if they're easy, cool. Some tests are going to be difficult. Like I never wanted to be in a boy band. You know, that wasn't I grew up on hip hop. You know, you want to give me Cool G rap? Okay, I got it. I don't know shit about NSYNC or the Backstreet Boys. You know, but that was a test. How do I do it? You know, like I said, the superhero thing, luckily I love comics, so that was a little bit easier, but that wasn't my idea. You know, so, I mean, and two, if you want to go back before that, in Music City Wrestling, Burt Prentice, he was the one that put me, Shannon Moore, Christian York, and Joey Mercury together as the Bad Street Boys. I didn't want to do that shit, you know. I was like, okay, that's what he wants. And I kind of I always look at things like, I don't want nobody to have creative control over me. I want to have creative conversation. I think we can meet in the middle. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, if you're the one, you know, paying the check, it's still a job. If I want to continue to get paid by this guy or this company, then I might have to meet them in the middle. And sometimes it's not even in the middle. Sometimes you got to do what they say. That's how work works. That's how a job works. I can't go to McDonald's and say, hey, I want to make eggs all day long. They tell me to get the hell out of there, it is a job. It's a job. I think a lot of younger talents have this grand idea because they've heard some of the legends go, squeaky wheel gets the oil. A lot of squeaky wheels get fucking replaced too and never are seen again. So
right.
I just kind of always looked at things like a test and how can I make this work, even if I don't want to, even if it's something that, on the surface, I don't want to do. I'm still, when I'm in that ring, I'm going to do it as best I can. And I'm going to pass that test.
Yep. I hear you, man. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here. I know you got your life to get back to, and I thank you for joining us. So David Arquette, when he came back to pro wrestling, he came to us here in Championship Wrestling from Hollywood to get his bearings straight and get back into the ring. And, he had a big feud with RJ City on our show. The librarian, Peter Avalon, was his trainer, now in AEW. We did a whole year with him, got him on track. But I don't know if most people know this. You were his body double and Ready to Rumble.
Yeah, I was his stunt double. I think body double, is that a stand-in? I don't know.
The stand-in and the stunt. So you stand in for him and you do his stunts. Yeah,
I don't think I ever had. I don't think that particular film didn't have a lot of that for whatever reason.
Okay.
So I was just there. I was there initially just to do the choreograph the wrestling scenes. For a movie, they need to know what's going to happen in these scenes. We can't go out there and just call it on the fly, boys. You can't do that on the movie.
So stunt coordinator, maybe.
Yeah, so I was working with the stunt team to coordinate the wrestling scenes, and that was going to be at 3 weeks, pre-production. And then as we're starting to work with and what they wanted to do was they wanted me to train the stuntman, or me and Canyon to train the stuntman to do some of this stuff, because Canyon was going to be Oliver Platt's stunt double. And so, but then they figured out that was just going to be too difficult to train a stuntman to do what we do. The stuntman figured that shit out too, because I would go out there and be like taking bumps. We actually did some stuff in the Olympic Grand Auditorium, if that's the same place you're talking about. We actually filmed there.
Same place.
Yeah. So, and like I remember, like they had I needed to go through a table over the top rope, so they got a table out there, and I'm in the ring, and we got to for the camera purposes, what's it going to look like? I said, all right. So this table here, and so the stunt guys, they're looking for pads, wires. I ain't got none of that shit, So I just hit the ropes, the swanton layout, go over the top rope, crash through the table, and they're like, "What the fuck," And so it's like, no, that's what we do, and
right.
And so so that's how I ended up getting the gig for David. But I was just talking to David about this on another show we did together. It was the easiest gig I ever had because Dave wanted to do everything. He wanted to do all the stunts he could do. Like he loves wrestling so much.
Yep.
Literally they would have to say, Dave, we care about you. Here's this guy we don't care about. And that's when they would bring me in. If this guy gets fucked up, it's okay. If David gets fucked up, we got to stop the movie, movie production. So, but yeah, it was a lot of fun. That's how me and Dave became pretty good friends because of that. But it was, like I said, it was easy money. They really overpaid me for that.
Don't say that too loud. Speaking of stunt coordinators, I was one of the producers on Wrestling Society X on MTV, and Viacom, they made us bring in a stunt coordinator, and they gave us some names and whatever. And so I called Gene LaBelle because he does stunts. He's like the motorcycle stunts, all that kind of stuff, and he wasn't available. So then Mondo Guerrero came in. And we didn't tell Viacom that he was a wrestler, because he had his card and this and that, because, he'd let us do anything. So right. Mondo's just walking around the ring, just, like a Guerrero, just looking at stuff. And yeah, that face, you got it. The Hector Chavo face. It's like, so he'd be like, hey, just move that mat that way, about 1/4 of an inch. Yeah, that's perfect. You could, that's okay.
You're working the gimmick.
Yeah. And so we have these people there from like OSHA and from Paramount and MTV, and they're all worried about stuff. And Kevin Kleinrock's blowing everybody up, and New Jack has like jumper cables connected to his wet body, and like all this crazy shit we were doing. And Mondo never looked at anything. He was in catering, and he was just impressed that we were on the same set of the same stage as I Love Lucy was shot, and that's all I could talk about. But no, again, easy money. The Viacom, they overpaid us too. So, but at any rate, I won't keep it too much longer. I do appreciate you being here. Nick, do you have anything you'd like to ask?
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, man.
Okay.
My whole family's asleep now. We're on the East Coast, so I put my kids to bed early.
You got it. Well, hopefully you come back if we ask you back, and if you have some time, maybe come on out to Hollywood and we can make fun of Rick together.
Yeah, man. Like I'd love to come. I mean, once the traveling starts, opening back up, man, I can't wait to get back on the road. I'm surprised that I missed it because I'm not a traveler. When I'm not on the road, I stay home. It's no big deal. But after I think my last trip was at the end of February, so I am starting to finally get a little antsy. This whole time I've been fine, even with the furlough. I was like, oh, shit, I don't care. I was pretty smart with my money, so I'm okay. And I just been sitting at home chilling, but now I am starting to get a little antsy now.
Well, we're going to go back into production in July, I believe, here in LA on the Championship Wrestling from Hollywood show. Okay. So if there's an opportunity to see you out here, hopefully we can.
Okay, I am getting spandex ready, so just in case. That producer gig, I started to get the Arn Anderson bill, so now I got to get back in the Hurricane bill.
Gotcha, man. Okay, well, thanks for joining us, Nick. You can give them the handles and everything, and thank you guys for watching.
For sure, everyone follow us on Twitter at United Wrestling, Instagram at United Wrestling Network, and on YouTube United Wrestling Network, and Facebook United Wrestling Network. So, thank you everyone for joining us, and take care.
All right, guys. Good night. Be safe.
Yeah, you too, man.
Grandma says she loves you.
Are we still alive? Or you guys? I just saw that. Like, what?